You can rename a tent. You cannot rename land you never owned. You sold your father's name for $200.
My son sold my husband's farm sign for $200 the morning before his grand reopening. He said the old name made the property look poor. He did not know the deed under his fancy white tent still had my name on every page. That sign had hung over the front gate of Callahan Farm for 46 years. My husband, Henry, made it from an old barn plank after a storm split the roof. The letters were crooked. The paint was never right. But the day he lifted it onto those cedar posts, he said, "Now it knows who it belongs to." So when I drove up that Saturday and saw 2 clean bolts sticking out of an empty gatepost, I knew something in me had been taken down too. A white event tent covered the south pasture. Near the driveway, a new metal sign read, "The Callahan Estate." Henry would have laughed until he had to sit down. Daniel crossed the gravel in a linen shirt I knew Lauren had picked for him. "Where's the sign?" I asked. "Mom, don't start. We had to clean up the entrance." Lauren appeared behind him with a clipboard. "Ruth, today is a very big day. Let's keep the energy positive." I asked where Henry's sign is. Daniel looked toward the tent, toward the investors, toward anywhere but me. "I sold it to an antique guy. It was just an old sign." Just. That word is how people bury things while pretending they are not digging. "How much?" "200. I looked at the empty gatepost. "You sold your father's name for $200. Lauren sighed. "People are paying for elegance, Ruth, not a roadside produce stand." There it was. Not loud, not ugly enough for strangers to notice. Just a clean little knife slipped between the ribs. I had swallowed smaller cuts for almost a year. When Daniel came home from Des Moines and said he wanted to save the farm, I wanted badly to believe him. The barn needed work. My knees were not what they used to be. He said private events would bring money in. Then Lauren started calling survival branding. The barn became Heritage Hall. The farmhouse became the bridal cottage. Henry's tools disappeared because they looked too authentic. Our family photos came down because Lauren said guests needed a cleaner visual story. The cleaner the story got, the less of us was in it. I told myself not to be difficult. Mothers can turn disrespect into misunderstanding if they are scared enough of losing their children. So I let Daniel run the public side. I let Lauren choose the paint. But I had never signed over the land. After Henry got sick, we put everything in order. The deed stayed in my name. The access road stayed in my name. The well permit and water rights stayed in my name. Daniel had permission to operate events on part of the property, but ownership was not a story he could rebrand. It was paper, county paper, ink, signatures, the kind of thing people like Lauren think old women misplace. I did not make a scene. I only said, "I need a minute," and walked back to the farmhouse. In the bedroom, under Henry's side of the closet, I pulled out the blue tin box where he kept important papers. The deed was on top. Under it were the county maps, the easement records, the well permit, and a photograph of Henry standing beneath that old sign with Daniel on his shoulders. Daniel was 4 in that picture, grinning with one hand on the letter C. I called Mabel Ortiz, who had worked at the county clerk's office for 30 years. "They sold Henry's sign," I said. She went quiet. Then she said, "Bring me the papers." At her kitchen table, Mabel read every page. When she finished, she took off her glasses. "Ruth," she said, "they didn't sell a sign. They sold your place in your own story." By 3 o'clock, the tent was full. Lauren stood near the microphone, smiling like she had invented wheat. Daniel stood beside her, pale around the mouth. Lauren began, "Welcome to the new era of the Callahan Estate." I walked in carrying Henry's blue tin box. "Before you welcome anyone," I said, "you should tell them who owns the road they drove in on." Lauren's smile froze. "Ruth, this is not the time." "It is exactly the time," Daniel whispered. "Mom, please." "You can rename a tent, Daniel," I said. "You cannot rename land you never owned." I laid the deed on Lauren's decorated signing table. Then the access easement. Then the well permit. Mabel stepped forward. "I reviewed the county records this morning. Mrs. Callahan is the legal owner of the land, the access road, and the water rights required for commercial event use." Lauren's voice sharpened. "She gets emotional about old things. Daniel handles the business." "No," I said. "Daniel handles the decorations. I handle the land." The tent went silent. Then Lauren said the thing that ended it. "This is why I said she should stay out of the public side. She cannot separate memory from business." Daniel looked at her then. really looked. And I think for the first time, he heard what I had been hearing for months. Not business. Shame. I closed the tin box. It was never just a sign, I said. It was the name on the land you forgot to read. The reopening did not happen that day. The investor paused everything until ownership and licensing were clear. Lauren left before sunset. Daniel stayed. 2 days later, he found the sign at an antique warehouse 40 miles away. One corner was cracked. The paint was worse than ever. He brought it home in the back of his truck and cried before he could lift it out. We hung it together. The farm still hosts events now, but the sign at the gate says, Callahan Farm again. Under it, Daniel added a small brass plate, built by Henry and Ruth Callahan, protected by the woman who remembered. People ask if I regret stopping my son's big day. I don't. Talking kept me quiet. Paper made them listen. So, if someone is standing on what you built while telling you to step out of the picture, remember this. Your kindness is not permission to erase you. Your memories are not junk. And before anyone sells your name for $200, make sure they've read the deed.